If you thought last week's episode left you with your jaw on the floor, wait until you hear what happened in tonight's episode, because the search for Zethu just took a turn nobody saw coming, and by the end of this recap you are going to understand exactly why fans are calling this the most dramatic homecoming storyline of the year. Stick around till the end because I am breaking down every single detail, every side glance, and every hidden clue that the writers dropped in this episode. Let's get straight into it. We open tonight's episode right where things left off, with the news that the bail application has gone through. After days of tension in the courtroom and a community watching every headline, the accused finally walked free, and honestly, a lot of people online are asking the same question I am asking, which is why nobody is surprised that money and connections worked their magic once again. The moment the gates opened, it was clear this was not going to be a quiet homecoming. Cameras were rolling, neighbors were whispering, and the family at the center of this scandal knew that walking free from custody did not mean walking free from suspicion. While the community processes the news of the release, the show cuts to the hospital, where business is carrying on as if nothing has happened. Patients are still being treated, staff are still on rotation, and on the surface it looks like an ordinary working day. But underneath that calm hospital routine, there is a storm brewing, because everyone on that ward knows exactly what has been going on behind closed doors, and pretending otherwise is starting to wear thin on some of the senior staff. This brings us to one of the biggest moments of the episode, the confrontation between the head matron and the doctor at the center of the organ trafficking accusations. For weeks now, viewers have watched this matron defend her colleague through thick and thin, standing by him even when the evidence against him kept piling up. Tonight, that loyalty finally cracks. In a tense hallway scene, she tells him plainly that she is done pretending she does not know what has been happening in that operating theater, and that she refuses to let her name and her ward be dragged any further into his mess. It is a powerful scene, because for so long she has been the one character willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, and watching her turn is a real signal that the walls are closing in. What makes this scene even more emotional is the backstory the show reminds us of. The matron practically raised this doctor in her ward. She trained him, she mentored him, and she has spoken about him with pride to anyone who would listen. Tonight she admits, almost in tears, that she never imagined the boy she used to boast about would grow up to become a man capable of trafficking human organs for money. It is one of those performances that really lands, because you can feel the disappointment radiating off her, and it sets up what I think is going to be a much bigger falling out in the episodes ahead. Meanwhile, across town, tension is brewing in a completely different household. The wife at the center of this family drama has made her decision, and she is filing for divorce. She tells her husband directly that she is done waiting around for him to choose between his family and his obsession with controlling everyone around him, including his own sister. It is a heartbreaking scene because you can see how much history these two share, but it is also one of those moments where you understand exactly why she has reached her limit. She tells him clearly that she plans to move forward with her life, and that she is not interested in continuing to live under the shadow of secrets and suspicion that seem to follow this family everywhere they go. Her husband, for his part, is not handling any of this well. He is dealing with the fallout of his marriage falling apart at the exact same time that his missing sister has become the biggest story in the community. Between search parties, community meetings, and now his wife walking away, it is clear the pressure is getting to him. In one particularly telling scene, he snaps at his own sister-in-law during a search effort, accusing her of not taking the situation seriously enough, only to immediately regret his outburst once he realizes how unfair the accusation was. It is a small moment, but it says a lot about where his head is at right now, stretched thin between grief, suspicion, and fear for the one family member he feels responsible for protecting. Now let's talk about the actual disappearance, because this is where the episode really ramps up the mystery. The missing woman at the center of all this, a respected nurse in the community, has not been seen in days, and everyone close to her is starting to panic. Her fiancé has been leading the charge to find her, going door to door, appealing to the community for any information, and even reaching out to local authorities to file a formal missing persons report. What is interesting is how the show frames his reaction. He is not just worried, he is suspicious, and he starts connecting the dots between her disappearance and the organ trafficking investigation she had been quietly looking into. That's right, according to tonight's episode, the missing nurse had actually been digging into the operation herself. She had grown suspicious of the pattern of unexplained deaths and disappearances connected to the hospital, and she had started asking questions that clearly made some very powerful people uncomfortable. In a flashback sequence, we see her traveling to a nearby city to interview a source connected to a larger network allegedly running illegal procedures across the province. It is in this flashback that the scope of the story really widens, because it suggests this is not just one rogue doctor acting alone, but potentially a much bigger and more organized operation with connections stretching far beyond this one hospital. This detail changes everything, because it means her disappearance is not a coincidence. She got too close to the truth, and now the people she was investigating have every reason to want her silenced. The episode does a great job of building dread here, cutting between her fiancé's increasingly desperate search efforts and quiet scenes of the suspected doctor on the phone with unknown associates, clearly discussing how to handle the situation before it spirals further out of control. One of the standout scenes of the night involves the doctor's business partner, a man who has quietly been the one funding and organizing these procedures behind the scenes. Tonight we see just how deep his involvement goes. He is the one pressuring the doctor to keep taking on new clients, insisting that the operation cannot stop just because law enforcement is circling. There is a chilling moment where he tells the doctor point blank that they cannot afford to let this nurse expose them, no matter what it takes. It is one of those lines delivered so casually that it makes the threat feel even more real, because you get the sense that for him, this has always been purely about money, with very little regard for the human cost. Back at the family home, we see a quieter but equally important scene between two sisters-in-law who have had their differences throughout the season. One has always suspected that something was deeply wrong with how her family handled money and business, while the other has spent most of the season defending her husband no matter what. Tonight, for the first time, we start to see a crack in that defense. She admits, quietly and almost to herself, that she is starting to wonder if her instincts about her husband have been wrong all along. It's a subtle scene, but for long-time viewers of this story, it is a huge character shift, and it suggests we might be heading toward an alliance between these two women in the episodes to come. The episode also gives us an update on the young man who has been caught up in the periphery of all this drama, a former patient turned reluctant witness who narrowly avoided becoming another victim of the trafficking operation. Tonight we learn he has agreed to speak with the missing nurse's fiancé, sharing details about what he overheard during his time in that hospital ward. This is a huge break in the case, because his testimony could be the missing link connecting the doctor directly to the wider trafficking network. Naturally, word of this conversation does not stay secret for long, and by the end of the episode, it becomes clear that the wrong people have found out he has been talking. As the episode moves toward its climax, we cut back to the doctor, now visibly rattled by how quickly things are spiraling. He receives a phone call warning him that the nurse has been actively trying to free herself from wherever she is being held, and that if she succeeds, everything he has built over the past several years could come crashing down. This raises the stakes significantly, and it also raises one of the biggest questions of the entire season so far, which is whether he still has any real feelings left for her, or whether self-preservation has completely taken over. Longtime viewers will remember these two were once incredibly close, and the show seems to be deliberately playing with that history, making us wonder if there is any part of him still capable of protecting her, even now. There is also a brief but important scene involving community members organizing an official search party, complete with flyers and radio appeals asking anyone with information about the missing nurse to come forward. It's a small scene, but it grounds the story in a very real and relatable way, reminding us that behind all of the hospital politics and criminal conspiracy, there is a genuine human tragedy playing out, a missing woman whose family and community are desperate for answers. By the final act, the episode leaves us with several major threads dangling. Will the matron go public with what she knows, potentially ending the doctor's career for good? Will the wife who just filed for divorce end up being the key witness that finally exposes her husband's role in all of this? And most urgently, will the missing nurse manage to escape before it's too late, or will the people trying to silence her get to her first? What really stood out to me in tonight's episode is how the writers are slowly connecting every single storyline into one central conspiracy. What started as a simple family drama about pride, money, and control has evolved into a much darker story about organized crime hiding in plain sight within a respected institution. That kind of slow-burn storytelling is exactly what keeps viewers coming back week after week, because every episode reveals just a little more of how deep this rabbit hole actually goes. I also want to point out how well the cast is selling this material. The performances tonight, particularly from the matron and the estranged wife, carried a lot of emotional weight, and it is clear the actors understand exactly how high the stakes are for their characters at this point in the story. These are not just plot twists for the sake of drama, they feel like natural consequences of choices these characters have been making all season long, and that is what makes this storyline so compelling to follow. So where does this leave us heading into next week? All signs point toward the missing nurse's fate finally coming to light, one way or another. Whether she manages to escape on her own, gets rescued by the community search effort, or whether the worst-case scenario plays out, it is clear the show is building toward a major reveal very soon. At the same time, we cannot ignore the family drama simmering in the background, with a divorce now in motion and loyalties shifting in ways that could reshape the entire dynamic of this story going forward. That's everything for tonight's recap. Let me know in the comments what you think is really going on with the missing nurse, and whether you believe the doctor still has any loyalty left toward her after everything that has happened. Do you think the matron will finally go to the authorities, or will she stay silent to protect the hospital's reputation? Drop your predictions below, hit that like button if you enjoyed this recap, and subscribe so you don't miss next week's breakdown. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.